Book 3, Part 1 of Ovid's Metamorphoses. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Morgan Scorpion. Metamorphoses by Publius Ovidius Naso. Translated by Brooks Moore. Book 3, Part 1. Now Jupiter had not revealed himself, nor laid aside the semblance of a bull, until they stood upon the plains of Crete. But, not aware of this, her father bade her brother Cadmus search through all the world, until he found his sister, and proclaimed him doomed to exile if he found her not. Thus was he good and wicked in one deed. When he had vainly wandered over the earth, for who can fathom the deceits of Jove, Cadmus, the son of Agenor, shunned his country and his father's mighty wrath. But he consulted the famed oracle of Phoebus, and inquired of them what land might offer him a refuge and a home. And Phoebus answered him, When on the plains a heifer that has never known the yoke shall cross thy path, go thou with her, and follow where she leads, and when she lies to rest herself upon the meadow green, there shalt thou stop, as it will be a sign for thee to build upon that plain the wells of a great city, and its name shall be the city of Boeotia. Cadmus turned, but hardly had descended from the cave Castalion, ere he saw a heifer go unguarded, gentle-paced, without the scars of labour on her neck. He followed close upon her steps, and silently adored celestial Phoebus, author of his way, till over the channel that Cephissus wears he forded to the fields of Panope, and even over to Boeotia. There stood the slow-paced heifer, and she raised her forehead, broad with shapely horns, towards heaven, and as she filled the air with lowing, stretched her side upon the tender grass, and turned her gaze on him who followed in her path. Cadmus gave thanks and kissed the foreign soil, and offered salutation to the fields and unexplored hills. Then he prepared to make large sacrifice to Jupiter, and ordered slaves to seek the living springs whose waters in libation might be poured. There was an ancient grove, whose branching trees had never known the desecrating axe, where, hidden in the undergrowth, a cave, with osiers bending round its low-formed arch, was hollowed in the jutting rocks. Deep found in the dark centre of that hallowed grove, beneath its arched roof a beauteous stream of water welled serene. Its gloom concealed a dragon, sacred to the warlike Mars, crested and gorgeous with iridescent scales, and eyes that sparkled as the glow of coals. A deadly venom had puffed up his bulk, and from his jaws he darted forth 3 tongues, and in a triple row his sharp teeth stood. Now those who ventured of the Tyrian race, misfortuned followers of Cadmus, took the path that led them to this grove, and when they cast down splashing in the springs an urn, the hidden dragon stretched his azure head out from the cavern's gloom and vented forth terrific hissings. Horrified they dropped their urns. A sudden trembling shook their knees, and their life-blood was ice within their veins. The dragon wreathed his scales in rolling knots, and with a spring, entwisted in great folds, reared up his bulk beyond the middle rings, high in the air from whence was given his gaze the extreme confines of the grove below. A size prodigious, his enormous bulk, if seen extended where was naught to hide, would rival in its length the serpent's folds, involved betwixt the plains of the twin bears. The terrified Phoenicians, whether armed for conflict, or in flight precipitate, or whether held incapable from fear, he seized with sudden rage, stung them to death, or crushed them in the grasp of crushing folds, or blasted with the poison of his breath. High in the heavens the sun small shadow made, when Cadmus, wondering what detained his men, prepared to follow them. Clothed in a skin torn from a lion, he was armed, complete, with lance of glittering steel, and with a dart, but passing these he had a dauntless soul. When he explored the grove and there beheld the lifeless bodies, and above them stretched the vast victorious dragon licking up the blood that issued from their ghastly wounds, his red tongues dripping gore, then Cadmus, filled with rage and grief, "Behold, my faithful ones, I will avenge your deaths, or I will share it." He spoke, and lifted up a millstone huge in his right hand, and having poised it, hurled with a tremendous effort, dealing such a blow would crush the strongest builded walls. Yet neither did the dragon flinch the shock, nor was he wounded, for his armour scales, fixed in his hard and swarthy hide, repelled the dreadful impact. Not the javelin thus, so surely by his armoured skin was foiled, for through the middle segment of his spine the steel point pierced, and sank beneath the flesh, deep in his entrails. Writhing in great pain, he turned his head upon its bleeding back, twisting the shaft with force prodigious, shook it back and forth, and wrenched it from the wound, with difficulty wrenched it, but the steel remained securely fastened in his bones. Such agony but made increase of rage. His throat was swollen with great knotted veins, a white froth gathered on his poisonous jaws, the earth resounded with his rasping scales. He breathed upon the grass a pestilence, steaming mephitic from his Stygian mouth. His body writhes up in tremendous gyres, his folds, now straighter than a beam, untwist. He rushes forward on his vengeful foe, his great breast crushing the deep-rooted trees. Small space gave Cadmus to the dragon's rage, for by the lion's spoil he stood the shock, and thrusting in his adversary's jaws the trusted lance, gave check his mad career. Wild in his rage, the dragon bit the steel, and fixed his teeth on the keen-biting point. Out from his poisoned palate streams of gore spouted and stained the green with sanguine spray. Yet slight the wound, for he recoiled in time, and drew his wounded body from the spear, by shrinking from the sharp steel saved his throat a mortal wound. But Cadmus, as he pressed the spear point deeper in the serpent's throat, pursued him till an oak tree barred the way. To this he fixed the dragon through the neck, the stout trunk bending with the monster's weight, groaned at the lashing of his serpent tail. While the brave victor gazed upon the bulk enormous of his vanquished foe, a voice was heard, from whence was difficult to know, but surely heard. Son of Agenor, why art thou here standing by this carcass worm? For others shall behold thy body changed into a serpent. Terrified, amazed, he lost his colour and his self-control. His hair stood upright from the dreadful fright. But lo, the hero's watchful deity, Minerva from the upper realms of air, appeared before him. She commanded him to sow the dragon's teeth in mellowed soil, from which might spring another race of men. And he obeyed, and as he ploughed the land, took care to scatter in the furrowed soil the dragon's teeth, a seed to raise up man. 'Tis marvellous but true, when this was done the clods began to move. A spear point first appeared above the furrows, followed next by helmet-covered heads, nodding their cones, their shoulders, breasts, and arms weighted with spears, and largely grew the shielded crop of men. So it is in the joyful theatres when the gay curtains, rolling from the floor, are upward drawn until the scene is shown. It seems as if the figures rise to view. First we behold their faces, then we see their bodies, and their forms by slow degrees appear before us on the painted cloth. Cadmus, affrighted by this host, prepared to arm for his defence, but one of those from earth crested cried, "Arm not, away from civil wars," and with his trenchant sword he smote an earth-born brother, hand to hand, even as the vanquished so the victor fell, pierced by a dart some distant brother hurled, and likewise he who cast that dart was slain, both breathing forth their lives upon the air so briefly theirs, expired together. All, as if demented, leaped in sudden rage, each on the other, dealing mutual wounds. So, having lived the space allotted them, the youthful warriors perished as they smote the earth, their blood-stained mother, with their breasts, and only 5 of all the troop remained, of whom Echyon, by Minerva warned, called on his brothers to give up the fight, and cast his arms away in pledge of faith. When Cadmus, exiled from Sidonia's gates, builded the city by Apollo named, these 5 were trusted comrades in his toil. Now Thebes is founded. Who can deem thy days unhappy in thine exile, Cadmus? Thou, the son-in-law of Mars and Venus, thou, whose glorious wife has borne to thine embrace daughters and sons, and thy grandchildren join around thee, almost grown to man's estate. Nor should we say, he leads a happy life, till after death the funeral rites are paid. Thy grandson, Cadmus, was the first to cast thy dear felicity in sorrow's gloom. Oh, it was pitiful to witness him, his horns outbranching from his forehead, chased by dogs that panted for their master's blood. If thou shouldst well inquire, it will be shown his sorrow was the crime of fortune, not his guilt, for who maintains mistakes are crimes? Upon a mountain stained with slaughtered game, the young Hyantian stood. Already day, increasing to meridian, made decrease the flitting shadows, and the hot sun shone betwixt extremes in equal distance. Such the hour, when speaking to his fellow friends, the while they wandered by those lonely haunts, Actaeon of Hyantis kindly thus: Our nets and steels are stained with slaughtered game, the day has filled its complement of sport. Now, when Aurora in her saffron car brings back the light of day, we may again repair to haunts of sport. Now Phoebus hangs in middle sky, cleaving the fields with heat. Enough of toil, take down the knotted nets. All did as he commanded, and they sought their needed rest. There is a valley called Gargaphia, sacred to Diana, dense with pine trees and the pointed cypress, where, deep in the woods that fringed the valley's edge, was hollowed in frail sandstone and the soft white pumice of the hills an arch, so true it seemed the art of man, for nature's touch ingenious had so fairly wrought the stone, making the entrance of a grotto cool. Upon the right a limpid fountain ran, and babbled, as its lucid channel spread into a clear pool edged with tender grass. Here, when awearied with exciting sport, the sylvan goddess loved to come and bathe her virgin beauty in the crystal pool. After Diana entered with her nymphs, she gave her javelin, quiver, and her bows to one accustomed to the care of arms. She gave her mantle to another nymph, who stood near by her as she took it off. 2 others loosed the sandals from her feet. But Crocale, the daughter of Ismenus, more skilful than her sisters, gathered up the goddess' scattered tresses in a knot. Her own were loosely wantoned on the breeze. Then in their ample urns dipped up the wave and poured it forth. The cloud nymph Nephele, the nymph of crystal pools called Hyele, the raindrop Ranis, Psacus of the Jews, and Phyele the guardian of their urns. And while they bathed Diana in their streams, Actaeon, wandering through the unknown woods, entered the precincts of that sacred grove. With steps uncertain wandered he as fate directed, for his sport must wait till morn. Soon as he entered where the clear springs welled or trickled from the grotto's walls, the nymphs, now ready for the bath, beheld the man, smote on their breasts, and made the woods resound, suddenly shrieking. Quickly gathered they to shield Diana with their naked forms, but she stood head and shoulders taller than her guards, as clouds bright tinted by the slanting sun, or purple-dyed aurora, so appeared Diana's countenance when she was seen. O how she wished her arrows were at hand! But only having water, this she took and dashed it on his manly countenance, and sprinkled with the avenging stream his hair, and said these words, presage of future woe: Go tell it, if your tongue can tell the tale, your bold eyes saw me stripped of all my robes. No more she threatened, but she fixed the horns of a great stag firm on his sprinkled brows. She lengthened out his neck, she made his ears sharp at the top, she changed his hands and feet, made long legs of his arms, and covered him with dappled hair. His courage turned to fear. The brave son of Autonoe took to flight, and marvelled that he sped so swiftly on. He saw his horns reflected in a stream, and would have said, Ah, wretched me! But now he had no voice, and he could only groan. Large tears ran trickling down his face, transformed in every feature. Yet, as clear remained his understanding, and he wondered what he should attempt to do. Should he return to his ancestral palace, or plunge deep in vast vacuities of forest wilds? Fear made him hesitate to trust the woods, and shame deterred him from his homeward way. While doubting thus, his dogs espied him there. First Blackfoot and the sharp-nosed Tracer raised the signal. Tracer of the Gnossian breed, and Blackfoot of the Spartan. Swift as wind the others followed. Glutton, Quicksight, Surefoot, 3 dogs of Arcady, then valiant Killbuck, Tempest, fierce Hunter, and the rapid Wingfoot, sharp-scented Chaser, and Wood-Ranger wounded so lately by a wild boar, savage Wildwood, the wolf begot with shepherdess the cow-dog, and ravenous Harpy followed by her twin whelps, and thin-girt Leyden chosen from Sicyonia. Racer and Barker, brindled Spot and Tiger, sturdy old Stout and white-haired Blanche, and black Smut, lusty big Lacon, trusty Storm and Quickfoot, active young Wolfet and her Cyprian brother, black-headed Snap, blazed with a patch of white hair from forehead to his muzzle, swarthy Blackcoat and shaggy Bristle, Towser and Wildtooth, his sire of Dicte and his dam of Lacon, and yelping babbler, these and others, more than patience leads us to recount or name, all eager for their prey. The pack surmounts rocks, cliffs, and crags, precipitous, where paths are steep, where roads are none. He flies by routes so oft pursued, but now, alas, his flight is from his own. He would have cried, "Behold your master, it is I, Actaeon." Words refused his will. The yelping pack pressed on. First Blackmane seized and tore his master's back, Savage the next. Then Rover's teeth were clinched deep in his shoulder. These, though tardy out, cut through a bypath, and arriving first, clung to their master till the pack came up. The whole pack fastened on their master's flesh, till place was none for others. Groaning he made frightful sounds, that not the human voice could utter, nor the stag, and filled the hills with dismal moans, and as a suppliant fell down to the ground upon his trembling knees, and turned his stricken eyes on his own dogs, entreating them to spare him from their fangs. But his companions, witless of his plight, urged on the swift pack with their hunting cries. They sought Actaeon, and they vainly called, "Actaeon, hi Actaeon," just as though he was away from them. Each time they called he turned his head, and when they chided him, whose indolence denied the joys of sport, how much he wished an indolent desire had happily held him from his ravenous pack. Oh, how much better 'tis to see the hunt, and the fierce dogs, than feel their savage deeds. They gathered round him, and they fixed their snouts deep in his flesh, tore him to pieces, he whose features only as a stag appeared. 'Tis said, Diana's fury raged with none abatement, till the torn flesh ceased to live. End of Book 3, Part 1.
Book 3, Part 2 of Ovid's Metamorphoses. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Leni. Metamorphoses by Publius Ovidius Naso. Translated by Brooks Moore. Book 3, Part 2. Hapless Actaeon's end in various ways was now regarded. Some deplored his doom, but others praised Diana's chastity, and all gave many reasons. But the spouse of Jove, alone remaining silent, gave nor praise nor blame. Whenever calamity befell the race of Cadmus, she rejoiced in secret, for she visited her rage on all Europa's kindred. Now a fresh occasion had been added to her grief, and wild with jealousy of Semele, her tongue as ever ready to her rage, lets loose a torrent of abuse. Away, away with words! Why should I speak of it? Let me attack her, let me spoil that jade. Am I not Juno, the supreme of heaven, queen of the flashing sceptre? Am I not sister and wife of Jove omnipotent? She even wishes to be known by him, a mother of a deity, a joy almost denied to me. Great confidence has she in her great beauty. Nevertheless, I shall so weave the web the bolt of Jove would fail to save her. Let the gods deny that I am Saturn's daughter, if her shade descend not stricken to the Stygian wave. She rose up quickly from her shining throne, and hidden in a cloud of fiery hue descended to the home of Semele, and while encompassed by the cloud, transformed her whole appearance as to counterfeit old Beryl, an Epidaurian nurse who tended Semele. Her tresses changed to grey, her smooth skin wrinkled, and her step grown feeble as she moved, with trembling limbs. Her voice was quavering as an ancient dame's, as Juno, thus disguised, began to talk to Semele. When presently the name of Jove was mentioned, artful Juno thus, doubtful that Jupiter could be her love: "When Jove appears to pledge his love to you, implore him to assume his majesty and all his glory, even as he does in presence of his stately Juno. Yea, implore him to caress you as a god." With artful words as these the goddess worked upon the trusting mind of Semele, daughter of Cadmus, till she begged of Jove a boon that only hastened her sad death, For Jove, not knowing her design, replied, "Whatever thy wish, it shall not be denied, and that thy heart shall suffer no distrust, I pledge me by that deity, the waves of the deep Stygian lake, oath of the gods." All overjoyed at her misfortune, proud that she prevailed, and pleased that she secured of him a promise that could only cause her own disaster, Semele addressed almighty Jove: "Come unto me in all the splendor of thy glory, as thy might is shown to Juno, goddess of the skies." Fain would he stifle her disastrous tongue. Before he knew her quest the words were said, and knowing that his greatest oath was pledged, he sadly mounted to the lofty skies, and by his potent nod assembled there the deep clouds, and the rain began to pour, and thunderbolts resounded. But he strove to mitigate his power, and armed him not with flames overwhelming as had put to flight his 100-handed foe Typhoeus, flames too dreadful. Other thunderbolts he took, forged by the Cyclops of a milder heat, with which insignia of his majesty, sad and reluctant, he appeared to her. Her mortal form could not endure the shock, and she was burned to ashes in his sight. An unformed babe was rescued from her side, and nurtured in the thigh of Jupiter, completed nature's time until his birth. Ino, his aunt, in secret nursed the boy and cradled him, and him Nysaean nymphs concealed in caves and fed with needful milk. While these events according to the laws of destiny occurred, and while the child, the twice-born Bacchus, in his cradle lay, 'tis told that Jupiter, a careless hour, indulged too freely in the nectar cup, and having laid aside all weighty cares, jested with Juno as she idled by. Freely the god began: "Who doubts the truth? The female's pleasure is a great delight, much greater than the pleasure of a male." Juno denied it, wherefore it was agreed to ask Tiresias to declare the truth, than whom none knew both male and female joys. For wandering in a green wood he had seen two serpents coupling, and he took his staff and sharply struck them till they broke and fled. 'Tis marvellous that instant he became a woman from a man, and so remained while 7 autumns passed. When 8 were told, again he saw them in their former plight, and thus he spoke: "Since such a power was wrought by one stroke of a staff, my sex was changed, again I strike." And even as he struck the same 2 snakes, his former sex returned, his manhood was restored. As both agreed to choose him umpire of the sportive strife, he gave decision in support of Jove. From this the disappointment Juno felt surpassed all reason, and enraged decreed eternal night should seal Tiresias' eyes. Immortal deities may never turn decrees and deeds of other gods to naught, but Jove, to recompense his loss of sight, endowed him with the gift of prophecy. Tiresias' fame of prophecy was spread through all the cities of Ionia, for his unerring answers unto all who listened to his words. And first of those that hearkened to his faithful prophecies, a lovely nymph named Lyriope came with her dear son, who then 15 might seem a man or boy, he who was born to her upon the green merge of Cephissus' stream, that mighty river-god whom she declared the father of her boy. She questioned him, imploring him to tell her if her son, unequalled for his beauty, whom she called Narcissus, might attain a ripe old age. To which the blind seer answered in these words: "If he but fail to recognize himself, a long life he may have beneath the sun." So frivolous the prophet's words appeared, and yet the event, the manner of his death, the strange delusion of his frenzied love, confirmed it. 3 times 5 years so were passed. Another 5 years, and the lad might seem a young man or a boy. And many a youth and many a damsel sought to gain his love, but such his mood and spirit and his pride, none gained his favour. Once a noisy nymph, who never held her tongue when others spoke, who never spoke till others had begun, mocking Echo spied him as he drove, in his delusive nets, some timid stags. For Echo was a nymph in olden time, and more than vapid sound possessed the form. And she was then deprived the use of speech, except to babble and repeat the words once spoken over and over. Juno confused her silly tongue, because she often held that glorious goddess with her endless tales, till many a hapless nymph from Jove's embrace had made escape adown a mountain. But for this the goddess might have caught them. Thus the glorious Juno, when she knew her guile, "Your tongue, so freely wagged at my expense, shall be of little use; your endless voice much shorter than your tongue." At once the nymph was stricken as the goddess had decreed, and ever since she only mocks the sounds of others' voices, or perchance returns their final words. One day, when she observed Narcissus wandering in the pathless woods, she loved him, and she followed him with soft and stealthy tread. The more she followed him, the hotter did she burn, as when the flame flares upward from the sulphur on the torch. Oh, how she longed to make her passion known, to plead in soft entreaty, to implore his love! But now, till others have begun, a mute of nature she must be. She cannot choose but wait the moment when his voice may give to her an answer. Presently the youth, by chance divided from his trusted friends, cries loudly, "Who is here?" And Echo, "Here," replies. Amazed, he casts his eyes around and calls with louder voice, "Come here! Come here!" She calls the youth who calls. He turns to see who calls him, and beholding naught, exclaims, "Avoid me not!" "Avoid me not!" returns. He tries again, and is deceived by this alternate voice, and calls aloud, "Oh, let us come together!" Echo cries, "Oh, let us come together!" Never sound seemed sweeter to the nymph, and from the woods she hastens in accordance with her words, and strives to wind her arms around his neck. He flies from her, and as he leaves her, says, "Take off your hands! You shall not fold your arms around me. Better death than such a one should ever caress me." Naught she answers, save, "Caress me." Thus rejected she lies hid in the deep woods, hiding her blushing face with the green leaves, and ever after lives concealed in lonely caverns in the hills. But her great love increases with neglect. Her miserable body wastes away, wakeful with sorrows. Leanness shrivels up her skin, and all her lovely features melt, as if dissolved upon the wafting winds. Nothing remains except her bones and voice. Her voice continues in the wilderness. Her bones have turned to stone. She lies concealed in the wild woods, nor is she ever seen on lonely mountain range. For though we hear her calling in the hills, 'tis but a voice that lives among the hills. Thus he deceived the nymph and many more, sprung from the mountains or the sparkling waves. And thus he slighted many an amorous youth, and therefore some one whom he once despised, lifting his hands to heaven, implored the gods, "If he should love, deny him what he loves." And as the prayer was uttered, it was heard by Nemesis, who granted her assent. There was a fountain, silver clear and bright, which neither shepherds nor the wild she-goats that ranged the hills, nor any cattle's mouth had touched. Its waters were unsullied, birds disturbed it not, nor animals, nor boughs that fall so often from the trees. Around, sweet grasses, nourished by the stream, grew. Trees that shaded from the sun let balmy airs temper its waters. Here Narcissus, tired of hunting and the heated noon, lay down, attracted by the peaceful solitudes and by the glassy spring. There, as he stooped to quench his thirst, another thirst increased. While he is drinking, he beholds himself reflected in the mirrored pool, and loves an imagined body which contains no substance, for he deems the mirrored shade a thing of life to love. He cannot move, for so he marvels at himself, and lies with countenance unchanged, as if indeed a statue carved on Parian marble. Long, supine upon the bank, his gaze is fixed on his own eyes, twin stars. His fingers, shaped as Bacchus might desire, his flowing hair is glorious as Apollo's, and his cheeks youthful and smooth, his ivory neck, his mouth dreaming in sweetness, his complexion fair and blushing as the rose in snowdrift white. All that is lovely in himself he loves, and in his witless way he wants himself. He who approves is equally approved. He seeks, is sought. He burns, and he's burned. And how he kisses the deceitful fount, and how he thrusts his arms to catch the nag that's pictured in the middle of the stream. Yet never may he wreathe his arms around that image of himself. He knows not what he there beholds, but what he sees inflames his longing, and the error that deceives allures his eyes. But why, O foolish boy, so vainly catching at this flitting form? The cheat that you are seeking has no place. Avert your gaze, and you will lose your love, for this that holds your eyes is nothing save the image of yourself reflected back to you. It comes and waits with you. It has no life. It will depart if you only go. Nor food nor rest can draw him thence. Outstretched upon the overshadowed green, his eyes fixed on the mirrored image never may know their longing satisfied, and by their sight he is himself undone. Raising himself a moment, he extends his arms around, and beckoning to the murmuring forest. O ye aisled wood, was ever man in love more fatally than I? Your silent paths have sheltered many a one whose love was told, and ye have heard their voices. Ages vast have rolled away since your forgotten birth, but who is he through all those weary years that ever pined away as I? Alas, this fatal image wins my love as I behold it, but I cannot press my arms around the form I see, the form that gives me joy. What strange mistake has intervened betwixt us and our love? It grieves me more than neither lands nor seas nor mountains, no, nor walls with closed gates deny our loves, but only a little water keeps us far asunder. Surely he desires my love and my embraces, for as oft I strive to kiss him, bending to the limpid stream my lips, so often does he hold his face fondly to me, and vainly struggles up. It seems that I could touch him. 'Tis a strange delusion that is keeping us apart. Whoever thou art, come up, deceive me not. Oh, whither when I fain pursue art thou? Ah, surely I am young and fair, the nymphs have loved me, and when I behold thy smiles I cannot tell thee what sweet hopes arise. When I extend my loving arms to thee, thine also are extended me. Thy smiles return my own. When I was weeping, I have seen thy tears, and every sign I make thou cost return. And often thy sweet lips have seemed to move, that peradventure words which I have never heard thou hast returned. No more my shade deceives me, I perceive. 'Tis I in thee, I love myself. The flame arises in my breast and burns my heart. What shall I do? Shall I at once implore? Or should I linger till my love is sought? What is it I implore? The thing that I desire is mine. Abundance makes me poor. Oh, I am tortured by a strange desire, unknown to me before, for I would fain put off this mortal form, which only means I wish the object of my love away. Grief saps my strength, the sands of life are run, and in my early youth am I cut off, but death is not my bane. It ends my woe. I would not death for this that is my love, as two united in a single soul would die as one. He spoke, and crazed with love returned to view the same face in the pool, and as he grieved his tears disturbed the stream, and ripples on the surface, glassy clear, defaced his mirrored form. And thus the youth, when he beheld that lovely shadow go, "Ah, whither canst thou fly? Oh, I entreat thee, leave me not! Alas, thou cruel boy, thus to forsake thy lover! Stay with me, that I may see thy lovely form, for though I may not touch thee, I shall feed my eyes and soothe my wretched pains." And while he spoke, he rent his garment from the upper edge, and beating on his naked breast, all white as marble, every stroke produced a tint as lovely as the apple streaked with red, or as the glowing grape when purple bloom touches the ripening clusters. When as glass again the rippling water smoothed, and when such beauty in the stream the youth observed, no more could he endure. As in the flame the yellow wax, or as the hoar-frost melts in early morning 'neath the genial sun, so did he pine away, by love consumed, and slowly wasted by a hidden flame. No vermeil bloom now mingled in the white of his complexion fair, no strength has he, no vigour, nor the comeliness that wrought for love so long. Alas, that handsome form, by Echo fondly loved, may please no more. But when she saw him in his hapless plight, though angry at his scorn, she only grieved. As often as the love-lorn boy complained, "Alas! alas!" her echoing voice returned. And as he struck his hands against his arms, she ever answered with her echoing sounds. And as he gazed upon the mirrored pool, he said at last, "Ah, youth beloved in vain!" In vain, in vain, the spot returned his words, and when he breathed the sad farewell, "Farewell," sighed Echo too. He laid his wearied head and rested on the verdant grass, and those bright eyes, which had so loved to gaze, entranced on their own master's beauty, sad night closed. And now, although among the nether shades his sad sprite roams, he ever loves to gaze on his reflection in the Stygian wave. His Naiad sisters mourned, and having clipped their shining tresses, laid them on his corpse, and all the Dryads mourned, and Echo made lament anew. And these would have upraised his funeral pyre, and waved the flaming torch, and made his bier, but as they turned their eyes where he had been, alas, he was not there, and in his body's place a sweet flower grew, golden and white, the white around the gold. End of Book 3, Part 2.
Book 3, Part 3 of Ovid's Metamorphoses. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mark Harrington. Metamorphoses by Publius Ovidius Naso. Translated by Brooks Moore. Book 3, Part 3. Narcissus's fate, when known throughout the land and cities of Achaia, added fame deserved to blind Tiresias, mighty seer. Yet Pentheus, bold despiser of the gods, son of Echion, scoffed at all his praise, and, soul of man deriding the great seer, upbraided him his hapless loss of sight. And shaking his white temples, hoar with age, Tiresias of Pentheus prophesied, "O glad the day to thee, if, light denied, thine eyes, most fortunate, should not behold the Bacchanalian rites. The day will come, and soon the light will dawn, when Bacchus, born of Semele, shall make his advent known. All hail the new god Bacchus. Either thou must build a temple to this deity, or shalt be torn asunder. Thy remains, throughout the forest scattered, will pollute the wood with sanguinary streams, and thy life-blood bespatter with corrupting blots thy frenzied mother and her sisters twain. And all shall come to pass, as I have told, because thou wilt not honor the new god. And thou shalt wail and marvel at the sight of blind Tiresias, though veiled in night." And as he spoke, lo, Pentheus drove the seer. But all his words, prophetic, were fulfilled, and confirmation followed in his steps. Bacchus at once appears, and all the fields resound with shouts of everybody there. Men, brides, and matrons, and a howling rout, nobles and commons, and the most refined, a motley multitude, resistless born to join those rites of Bacchus there begun. Then Pentheus cries, "What madness, O ye brave descendants of the dragon! Sons of Mars, what frenzy has confounded you? Can sounds of clanging brass prevail, and pipes and horns and magical delusions, drunkenness and yelling women, and obscene displays and hollow drums overcome you, whom the sword, nor troops of war, nor trumpet could affright? How shall I wonder at these ancient men who, crossing boundless seas from distant Tyre, hither transferred their exiled household gods and founded a new Tyre, but now are shorn, and even as captives would be led away without appeal to Mars? And, O young men, of active prime, whose vigor equals mine, cast down your ivy scepters, take up arms, put on your helmets, strip your brows of leaves, be mindful of the mighty stock you are, and let your souls be animated with the spirit of that dauntless dragon which, unaided, slew so many, and at last died to defend his fountain and his lake. So ye may conquer in the hope of fame. He gave the brave to death, but with your arms ye shall expel the worthless and enhance the glory of your land. If fate decree the fall of Thebes, oh, let the engines of war and men pull down its walls, and let the clash of steel and roaring flames resound. Thus, blameless in great misery, our woes would be the theme of lamentations known to story, and our tears would shame us not. But now an unarmed boy will conquer Thebes, a lad whom neither weapons, wars, nor steeds delight, whose ringlets reek with myrrh, adorned with chaplets, purple, and embroidered robes of interwoven gold. Make way for me, and I will soon compel him to confess his father is assumed, and all his rites are frauds. If in days gone Acrisius so held this vain god in deserved contempt, and shut the Argive gates against his face, why, therefore, should not Pentheus close the gates of Thebes with equal courage? Hence, away! Fetch the vile leader of these rioters in chains. Let not my mandate be delayed." Him to restrain his grandsire Cadmus strove, and Athamas and many of his trusted friends united in vain efforts to rebuke his reckless rage, but greater violence was gained from every admonition. His rage increased the more it was restrained, and injury resulted from his friends. So have I seen a stream in open course run gently on its way with pleasant noise, but whensoever logs and rocks detained, it foamed with violence increased against obstruction. Presently returning came his servants, stained with blood, to whom he said, "What have ye done with Bacchus?" And to him they made reply, "Not Bacchus have we seen, but we have taken his attendant lad, the chosen servant of his sacred rites." And they delivered to the noble king a youth, whose hands were lashed behind his back. Then Pentheus, terrible in anger, turned his awful gaze upon the lad, and though he scarce deferred his doom, addressed him thus: "Doomed to destruction, thou art soon to give example to my people by thy death. Tell me thy name. What are thy parents called? Where is thy land? And wherefore art thou found attendant on these bacchanalian rites?" But fearless, he replied, "They call my name Acoetes, and Maeonia is the land from whence I came. My parents were so poor, my father left me neither fruitful fields tilled by the lusty ox, nor fleecy sheep, nor lowing kine. For he himself was poor, and with his hook and line was wont to catch the leaping fishes landed by his rod. His skill was all his wealth. And when to me he gave his trade, he said, 'You are the heir of my employment, therefore unto you all that is mine I give.' And at his death he left me nothing but the running waves. They are the sum of my inheritance. And after a while, That I might not be bound forever to my father's rocky shores, I learned to steer the keel with dexterous hand, and marked with watchful gaze the guiding stars, the watery constellation of the Goat, Olenian, and the Bear, the Hyades, the Pleiades, the houses of the winds, and every harbor suitable for ships. So chanced it, as I made for Delos, first I veered close to the shores of Chios. There I steered, by plying on the starboard oar, and nimbly leaping gained the sea-wet strand. Now, when the night was past and lovely dawn appeared, I rose from slumber, and I bade my men to fetch fresh water, and I showed the pathway to the stream. Then did I climb a promontory's height, to learn from there the promise of the winds, which having done, I called the men and sought once more my ship. Opheltes, first of my companions, cried, "Behold, we come," and thinking he had caught a worthy prize in that unfruitful land, he led a boy, of virgin beauty formed, across the shore. Heavy with wine and sleep, the lad appeared to stagger on his way, with difficulty moving. When I saw the manner of his dress, his countenance and grace, I knew it was not mortal man, and being well assured, I said to them, "What deity abideth in that form I cannot say, but 'tis a god in truth. O whosoever thou art, vouchsafe to us propitious waters, ease our toils, and grant to these thy grace." At this, the one of all my mariners who was the quickest hand, who ever was the nimblest on the yards, and first to slip the ropes, Dictys exclaimed, "Pray not for us," and all approved his words. The golden-haired, the guardian of the prow, Melanthus, Libus, and Alcimedon approved it, and Apopius, who should urge the flagging spirits, and with rhythmic chants give time and measure to the beating oars, and all the others praised their leader's words. So blind is greed of gain. Then I rejoined, "Mine is the greatest share in this good ship, which I will not permit to be destroyed, nor injured by this sacred freight." And I opposed them as they came. Then Lycabas, the most audacious of that impious crew, began to rage. He was a criminal, who, for a dreadful murder, had been sent in exile from a Tuscan city's gates. Whilst I opposed, he gripped me by the throat and shook me as would cast me in the deep, had I not firmly held a rope, half stunned, and all that wicked crew approved the deed. Then Bacchus, be assured it was the god, as though the noise disturbed his lethargy from wine, and reason had regained its power, at last bespake the men, "What deeds are these? What noise assails my ears? What means decoyed my wandering footsteps? Whither do ye lead?" "Fear not," the steersman said, "but tell us fair the haven of your hope, and you shall land whereso your heart desires." "To Naxos steer," quoth Bacchus, "for it is indeed my home, and there the mariner finds welcome cheer." Him to deceive, they pledged themselves, and swore by gods of seas and skies to do his will, and they commanded me to steer that way. The Isle of Naxos was upon our right, and when they saw the sails were set that way, they all began to shout at once, "What ho, thou madman, what insanity is this, Acoetes? Make our passage to the left." And all the while they made their meaning known by artful signs or whispers in my ears. I was amazed and answered, "Take the helm," and I refused to execute their will, atrocious, and at once resigned command. Then all began to murmur, and the crew reviled me. Up Ithalion jumped and said, "As if our only safety is in you." With this he swaggered up and took command, and leaving Naxos, steered for other shores. Then Bacchus, mocking them, as if but then he had discovered their deceitful ways, looked on the ocean from the rounded stern, and seemed to sob as he addressed the men. "Ah, mariners, what alien shores are these? 'Tis not the land you promised, nor the port my heart desires. For what have I deserved this cruel wrong? What honor can accrue if strong men mock a boy, a lonely youth if many should deceive?" And as he spoke, I also wept to see their wickedness. The impious gang made merry at our tears, and lashed the billows with their quickening oars. By Bacchus do I swear to you, and naught celestial is more potent. All the things I tell you are as true as they surpass the limit of belief. The ship stood still, as if a dry dock held it in the sea. The wondering sailors labored at the oars, and they unfurled the sails in hopes to gain some headway with redoubled energies. But twisting ivy tangled in the oars, and interlacing held them by its weight. And Bacchus, in the midst of all, stood crowned with chaplets of grape leaves, and shook a lance covered with twisted fronds of leafy vines. Around him crouched the visionary forms of tigers, lynxes, and the mottled shapes of panthers. Then the mariners leaped out, possessed by fear or madness. Medon first began to turn a swarthy hue, and fins grew outward from his flattened trunk, and with a curving spine his body bent. Then Lycabas to him, "What prodigy is this that I behold?" Even as he spoke, his jaws were broadened, and his nose was bent. His hardened skin was covered with bright scales. And Libus, as he tried to pull the oars, could see his own hands shrivel into fins. Another of the crew began to grasp the twisted ropes, but even as he strove to lift his arms, they fastened to his sides. With bending body and a crooked back, he plunged into the waves, and as he swam displayed a tail as crescent as the moon. Now here, now there, they flounce about the ship, they spray her decks with brine, they rise and sink, they rise again, and dive beneath the waves. They seem in sportive dance upon the main. Out from their nostrils they spout sprays of brine, they toss their supple sides. And I alone, of 20 mariners that manned that ship, remained. A cold chill seized my limbs, I was so frightened. But the gracious God now spake me fair, "Fear not, and steer for Naxos." And when we landed there, I ministered on smoking altars Bacchanalian rites. But Pentheus answered him, "A parlous tale, and we have listened to the dreary end, hoping our anger might consume its rage. Away with him, hence drag him, hurl him out with dreadful torture into Stygian night." Quickly they seized and dragged Acoetes forth, and cast him in a dungeon triple strong. And while they fixed the instruments of death, kindled the fires, and wrought the cruel irons, the legend says, though no one aided him, the chains were loosened and slipped off his arms. The doors flew open of their own accord. But Pentheus, long persisting in his rage, not caring to command his men to go, himself went forth to Mount Cithaeron, where resound with singing and with shrilly note the votaries of Bacchus at their rites. As when with sounding brass the trumpeter alarms of war, the metalled charger neighs and scents the battle, so the clamored skies, resounding with the dreadful outcries, fret the wrath of Pentheus and his rage and flame. About the middle of the mount, with groves around its margin, was a treeless plain where nothing might conceal. Here, as he stood to view the sacred rites with impious eyes, his mother saw him first. She was so wrought with frenzy that she failed to know her son, and cast her thyrsus that it wounded him, and shouted, "Hi, come hither, ho! Come hither, my 2 sisters. A great boar hath strayed into our fields. Come, see me strike and wound him." As he fled from them in fright, the raging multitude rushed after him. And as they gathered round, in cowardice he cried for mercy, and condemned himself, confessing he had sinned against the god. And as they wounded him, he called his aunt. "Autonoe, have mercy. Let the shade of sad Actaeon move thee to relent." No pity moved her when she heard that name. In a wild frenzy, she forgot her son. While Pentheus was imploring her, she tore his right arm out. Her sister Ino wrenched the other from his trunk. He could not stretch his arms out to his mother, but he cried, "Behold me, mother." When Agave saw his bleeding limbs torn, scattered on the ground, she howled and tossed her head and shook her hair that streamed upon the breeze. And when his head was wrenched out from his mangled corpse, she clutched it with her blood-smeared fingers while she shouted, "Ho, companions! Victory, the victory is ours!" So when the wind strips from a lofty tree its leaves, which touched by autumn's cold are loosely held, they fall not quicker than the wretch's bleeding limbs were torn asunder by their cursed hands. Now, frightened by this terrible event, the women of Ismenus celebrate the new Bacchantian rites, and they revere the sacred altars heaped with frankincense. End of Book 3, Part 3.